Oh, that's okay. Okay, so I I recognize um, most of this in reality when I run projects. Can you
Hmm.
just clarify again the business requirements, higher level organizational needs,
And reasons
reasons for
for
the
the project.
project?
You remember we started with a business need. When the business
Yeah,
case was
no, I
there,
get the concept that's the most important high level requirement you can imagine.
exactly, exactly.
But I guess um, my brain is thinking normally I focus on product requirements
Hmm.
with the quality lens. So I
Hmm.
see product, I see quality. I guess I see stakeholder and transition in a different way, but I get that.
Okay, fine.
I just don't, I guess I'm trying to fill these in my brain into a requirements traceability matrix.
Okay,
And
fine.
business
Next,
requirements are more of a project objective or higher level that you wouldn't
how
put
do,
into requirements.
how does it align with the organizational strategy? How does it add value to the organization? These are the things. For example, if the business need was to generate more revenue for the organization, and this project is to develop some maybe constructing a road or something, then if any action in this process is not being profitable, then it can you can always question that higher level objectives are not being met. Why are we adding something to the requirement which are not profitable to us, right? So whatever, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that being profitable is the only strategic objective or the only business need. There could be many other. But you see, if I imagine that my strategic objective or the business need was to make more profits, and if something we are doing in this project is not, um, contributing towards that objective, then probably we should question that requirement. That this requirement is not aligned with the business requirement. You got it?
Yeah. No, I get that.
Should I move ahead?
Sure.
Okay. Next, we have collecting the requirement. We have got various mechanism, tools, methods, how to do that. And very briefly, I'll just rush through them. First of all, when you, as a project manager, you are trying, and this happens in the predictive and hybrid projects. It's not for agile because agile way of working is quite different. So when you're collecting the requirements here, you first tool you have is your expert judgment, your experience, and the people you can rely on. Maybe they are the experts or subject matter experts or consultants, are your team members, are your colleagues who can help you make certain decisions. This all is included in your expert judgment. When I say expert judgment, is not only your own expert judgment, but the expertise you can seek from around you. Then, okay, most of the decisions are basically best made through the expert judgment, but naturally, we could rely on interpersonal and team skills. Like, we can put a subject forward to our team and ask them to deliberate on it, maybe creatively. Expert judgment is normally logical, that, based on experience. But if there is something we need to do, which we have no precedence how to do it. It's something completely novel and new. Probably we have to deliberate creatively on it. Maybe there is no logical basis for doing that thing, no logical experience or historical record regarding that thing. So maybe we have to put team through a logical, oblique, creative discussion and ultimately come up with the new solutions. So nominal group technique is a way in which we make the people deliberate in small groups. But what you do is you kind of um, uh, whatever ideas you have about that thing, you divide them into these nominal groups and ask them to deliberate. Each team or each group will focus on a specific point and they will deliberate on that. That will save a lot of time because everybody would not be wasting time on the same point. If there are 10 points, I have 10 teams deliberating on it separately, and then they produce their creative and logical solutions and we put it all together. That is the nominal group technique. And if you really want to know about it, a nominal group technique that enhances brainstorming with a voting process used to rank the most useful ideas for further brainstorming or for prioritization. Now, if that is as far as that as a technique is concerned, I could have used it in Agile as well, but for the time being, we are discussing it from the point of view of uh, a predictive or a hybrid project, right? So
Yep.
we can rank the ideas and we can sort them out, we can filter them out, and ultimately we can make our decision based on that. We can use observations, we can do facilitation, we can make it comfortable for people to give them a comfortable environment in which they can think better, come up with better results and things like that. So these are the interpersonal and team skills, the three tools. Then we have got some data gathering tools like brainstorming, we have already talked about. We have got meeting, we have got other, but brainstorming is something which is creative in nature, right? It is not, brainstorming cannot be done on logical discussion. Brainstorming is done on creative discussion. Basically, when you want to think outside of the box, only then you invoke your brainstorming thing. Interviews, naturally, people who have had experiences that you want to kind of get ideas from some key personnel whom you know are expert on that area. Probably we interview them, but that would be only possible when certain people are available. If they know certain people are available, we may like to discuss it in focus groups who may have certain expertise on that. Or if there is a larger audience, we can resort to questionnaires and surveys. And lastly, we have got benchmarking. Now, I would ask you, how do you define a benchmarking?
Um, how do you define benchmarking? Okay, so that's, I guess, based on a solid set of data,
Mhm.
whether internally or externally
Okay.
gathered, we are able to establish a reliable baseline of information from which to measure against or yeah, calibrate with.
Hmm. But that
So
would be a baseline.
in estimation terms, um, it's basically a comparison that you can make on what you're currently working on against something that was done in the past, so that you can assess how big your current or challenge or piece of work is. You can size it against that benchmark.
You are right as far as the baseline is concerned, but we are not talking about baseline here. We are talking about the benchmark. And you are right in saying that yes, this is some kind of comparison, but naturally it is not the comparison with the past record. It is the comparison with what? It is not even a comparison with a standard. It is always, benchmarking is always a comparison with your competitors. Always with your competitors, not with the best practices, not with some standard. It is always with your competitors. So, when you want to improve yourself, you compare yourself with what your competitors are doing and who is the best in the field, and how do you compare with that party? And ultimately, what are the gaps between your way of working and their way of working? And you try to bridge them and ultimate try to become. It is a competitive kind of a thing. It is not a simple baseline comparison. It is competitive analysis. Benchmarking is always with a competitor. I hope you
Okay,
got
thank
that.
you. Yeah, that's an education for me. Thank you.
Good.
I thought you could do it internally as well. Okay,
Mm.
fair enough.
Actually, when you select your benchmark, you say, okay, this guy is my benchmark, and I have to beat him, right? So that benchmark is becomes your kind of a baseline, and you try to reach that level. And once you have reached that level, you have beaten that person. Simple as that. You have excelled in your excellence. Then is the data analysis. Naturally, you analyze the documents, you look at the various alternatives and choose the best out of them. You do the product analysis and things like that. In decision-making techniques, we resort to voting, which we do a lot in Agile. Agile is all about voting. Even estimation is voting. So decision making, and there are many ways of making decisions. Like naturally, there could be majority decision, there could be plurality decision, there could be a total consensus kind of a decision, whatever mechanism you are using. So voting is simply adding your votes and then telling who is the winner, right? So it may be like, raise your hands. That could be a kind of a voting. There are other mechanisms which you study in Agile. So those methods I'll not discuss here right now. Then multi-criteria decision analysis. Again, I say, okay, I will make the decision based on these three features, right? Okay, if these three features are equally weighted, then probably I could take a simple average of them. But what if one of the feature is heavier than two others? It's doubly heavier. So I would rather give it the double weightage. Multi-criteria decision making means that maybe it is a weighted average I'm trying to take. I am giving two times more weightage to that important point and one time weightage to other points. That means I'm not comparing for three items. I'm comparing for four items. You agree with me?
Yep.
So I am giving two times weightage to one, the most important point, one time weightage to the others, and ultimately I have got four. And then the average I take will not be out of three, but out of four. Anyways, this is called the multi-criteria decision analysis, and the definition here is a technique that utilizes a decision matrix to provide a systematic, analytical approach for establishing criteria such as risk levels, uncertainty, valuation, to evaluate and rank many ideas, right? So this is a mechanism for doing that. Then how do you represent this data you have collected through all these techniques and analysis? It could be shown in shape of a mind map. Have you ever used it?
Yes, I have.
Good. Affinity diagrams that actually shows the relationship between various things, and context diagram is also similar kind of a thing where you say the basic dependability or basic relationship of various in the context of the project, who all are the players and how do we connect with them. That is the context diagram. Then we have got prototyping and storyboarding. Prototyping, you understand that we try to imitate the project in a small mini project, and we try to develop a prototype. And if it works, then we can start moving towards the further thing. Storyboarding is a similar kind of a concept, but this is more of a paper concept. Like, you might have seen cartoon strips in the newspapers.
Yep.
Have you seen that?
Yep.
In the cartoon strip, there is a small little story going on in 3 or 4 pictures where, in first picture somebody is saying something, though it is supposed to be a comic, but the same concept has been taken up by the serious methods, and they start developing a storyboard in which there are a series of cartoons in which cartoon characters are actually your project characters, or your stakeholders, or your customers, or something, and they are trying to pose a specific scenario. What do they need? So, in a way, I would say storyboarding, or for that matter, user stories are developed through this method. So, storyboarding is a mechanism of clarifying the requirement or explaining the requirements as if they can be, done in a better manner. They're not misunderstood. They're clearly, explicitly defined. So even that cartoon strip kind of a thing can be used in a storyboard, and it could be recorded as such along with your story, that this is the storyboard for this user story, which explicitly clarifies who needs it, why they need it, what they need, and things like that. Have you used the storyboarding in your organization?
Yes, I've used it once
Mm-hmm.
in a program, I think. Sorry, at least I should say. Yeah.
So this is kind of a simulation. This is kind of a paper simulation, a cartoon simulation in which you try to explain your point of view as far as the requirement is concerned. Anyways, coming over to how to collect the requirements. Naturally, I have talked about interviews, focus groups, uh, question and answers, facilitated workshops, observations, all of these things are happening. So you can look at these. As far as the interview is concerned, I will always conduct the interviews if I know a person at a higher place who holds some knowledge. I would like to go and ask them, interview them, and ask them details, because I know this guy is the expert, and he holds all the data, and probably I can collect this data from him. So this is identify and define features and functions of deliverable. This can help me. That can be a structured, unstructured, or asynchronous kind of an interview. Structured, where you have already jotted down a questionnaire and then you keep asking those, or it could be unstructured, where we are asking random questions based out of the discussion, or it could be kind of a combination of both. Advantages are it can handle sensitive, confidential information because you are talking one-on-one to with that person. And mostly, I also think that when we are dealing with interviews, we are more frank with that person. That we have an affinity with that person created during the interview, and we can take a little bit of liberty, and we can be more frank, more personal in interviews. But if it is a focus group, probably we lose this advantage. So interviews help identify stakeholder requirements, goals, or expectations, and the consideration, the drawback of this is it captures only a single point of view. Now, this slide is very good, but because it elaborates on each one of these things. In a focus group, you can see it could be casual or interactive. It could be more than two people sitting in the meeting, maybe 5, 10 people who are experts of different areas. They all are put together. Naturally, I have got a better input because it's not only one person's point of view. A lot many people are but are there, and then I can moderate that, and I can get the best out of that. Naturally, the advantages are pre-selected participants for varied opinion, uh, small groups for focused approach and gathering specific information, and the downside is must pre-qualify stakeholders. You should not have useless people sitting in this kind of a focus group. They should be subject matter experts, and facilitation are essential. And one more bad downside or the drawback of this focus group is not written here. That is called group think. Do you understand what is a group think?
Yeah, I do.
So, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a bad thing.
So this bad thing should not happen here. We should not be influenced by others' point of view to adopt that as our point of view. This is something which happens in a focus group because a person who is more expert or more senior to this to the one person who is trying to give an opinion, they suppress their opinion and they start going with the opinion of the other person, which is not right. Anyways, this is a background. Then we have got facilitated workshop, and we have got a large audience, and we have to kind of interact with them. Probably we can't give them all an opportunity to speak. So how do we do it? We kind of present whatever we understand to a large audience of maybe 200 or 300 people, and then ask them about their opinion. The problem is, if everybody starts giving an opinion, we will not have time to collect all of it. So first ask the opinion, and if you see that there are a lot many opinions coming up, then you can ask them to drop their opinion in a box, something like that, or maybe you can give them an online link where they can give their suggestions, or better still, you could even circulate a kind of a questionnaire or a survey to them, and they could respond on that. That would be more objective. But anyways, that is for a large audience. So advantages: team can capture requirements from a large audience. Stakeholders can understand the concerns and requirements of others. Like, we have got other stakeholders sitting here. It is not only the customer. So customer would be able to understand the concerns of other stakeholders. So this is there has to be facilitation done in during these kinds of sessions, because if they're not facilitated, they tend to go out of control. When the people from whom you are trying to collect the requirement, they are kind of spread all over the globe, or maybe they are not in the same location, then we probably can resort to the questionnaires and surveys. They are very useful. They are very, for this kind of a scenario, probably this is the best mechanism you could adopt. So these are written formats, whether questionnaires or surveys. Very large groups, which are not even present at one location, can be addressed, and this will yield quantitative data. And the interview, the focus group, they are more qualitative data, right? But this quantitative data can be processed. You could take averages, you could do statistics on them, and you can come up with better results. Quick turnaround time, effective with varied and geographically dispersed respondents, and yields quantifiable data for statistical analysis. But the drawback is probably that could be more time consuming. Then answer oblique data quality depends on the question quality. If you do not design your format for the questionnaire or the survey in a very professional way, probably you will get garbled answers, which may not be really useful to you. So yes, there are downsides to it, but I have just explained to you all of these methods. Well, another method is observation, and that does not involve interaction with anyone. That is, you go and visit the customer site and try to observe things. The physical technique used to learn about a specific job role, task, or function. Maybe you try to job shadow someone, try to imitate someone, and try to learn how they are doing things, and then you record that. Advantages: team can understand where changes might be beneficial, right? You're not relying on someone else's statement, you are gaining first-hand experience on that. So that could be very instrumental. So there are certain things, there are certain requirements which have to be observed. Anyways, these are various ways to collect the requirements, and probably you knew most of them, and maybe you have learned a little bit, thing or two from this slide. Any comments?
Um, how much of this, again, do you think comes up in the exam? I mean, it seems pretty logical. I think I've gone through these in the past. So do I need to
Maybe
be able to identify and compare advantages or considerations or
No, 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 no,
characteristics,
no.
for
They
example.
will not ask you to compare the advantages of anything. There might be a couple of questions related to some of these things that, there might be a scenario that you have got a large audience and maybe what method do you suggest is most feasible for this scenario? That kind of thing. Or maybe there's a question specifically for a focus group and you may have to answer it. But this is all the information you need. Based on this one slide, you probably can answer all those questions. But just remember that those questions are going to be scenario based. They are not going to be just out of the textbook. They may say that you are doing a technical project and this is happening and that is happening, and you are trying to collect the data. So, in this scenario, which is the best approach you think could be used? Things like that. Got it?
I'm just thinking.
Hmm.
If you just leave it there 1 sec.
Hmm. Sure, sure.
One question.
Hmm.
It says on interviews,
Hmm.
it says captures only a single point of view. Um, I
Because
don't get that. I don't get that because you'd be
you're
doing
talking.
multiple interviews.
No, no, no. It's talking about our interview. You are talking to one on one with our person, and therefore only one person's point of view is captured in our interview. You could have interviewed 10 people, and then you have to summarize it in a kind of way. But interview itself, a single interview, will be the point of view of one person.
Okay.
Mhm. Moving
Thank
on.
you.
Data gathering, naturally, benchmarking, I have already explained to you. You can use benchmarking to generate product requirements, require best practices to make the comparison, evaluate and compare an organization's or project's practices with others, identify best practices in order to meet or exceed them. Now, when I say that, am I referring to benchmarking here? Is because you have to compare it with those other organizations who are doing things better than you. So benchmark yourself against them, and especially with the best one of them, and try to excel in these areas. And what are these areas? And these are the areas requires best practices to make comparisons. If you don't have your good practices good enough, you may resort to may compare them with the best practices of other organizations. So try to seek them. Evaluate and compare an organization or project's practices with others. Again, you are trying to do it with your competitors. Identify best practices in order to meet or exceed them, right? So not only your best practices, but others' best practices also. So this is about the data gathering and use of benchmarking in it. Then we
Sorry,
have the requirement.
sorry, just go back 1 second.
Okay. It's a lot of material on one slide, huh?
Why is it just, why is this slide just focused on benchmarking?
I don't understand what you say.
Why is this slide only focused on benchmarking?
That is one way of gathering the data. We are just trying to explain. Yeah. We are just trying to explain the benchmarking, this point. This point we are explaining in that slide,
Okay.
right? So it is about the benchmark only.
Okay.
Then comes the requirement prioritization. Well, this could help you in agile as well, but we do prioritization somehow in our predictive and hybrid projects as well. But the tools are very similar as we use in agile. So let us look at the various methods. If you are aware about some, we will skip them, right? Like, do you know Moscow analysis?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have in Moscow analysis, we put all the requirements in 4 baskets: must haves, should haves, could haves, and won't haves. Now, this is more appropriate to agile because in agile we can take a chance not to do something. So we can put certain things which are the least important into the won't have basket, that we will not do this job at all. But at the same time, the highest priority items are put in a must have basket, and must haves are things which should be done, which should definitely be done, and they are done on the first priority. Then, once we have done all the must haves, we can then look into the other basket, which is should have. That is also important, but not as life saving as the must have. Must have are kind of life saving requirements. You should do, you must do them. Then should haves could be addressed. If all the must have items have been done, then you can go into the should have. And should have, I'm not saying they're less important, but they are less important than the must haves. Therefore, they should be done after the must haves have been all completed. Okay, once the should haves have been also done, then you can look into the third basket, which is the third priority. And this is not really that important. If you could do it, it would be better. If you couldn't do it, that we don't mind. So you will try as much as of the could haves as are possible in the time available. And if you could not have done all, then there is no problem at all, because you have done all the must have and you have done all the should have. So could have, is an option. You could do them as much as you can within the available time. Let us assume that you have done all the must haves, all the should haves, and all the could have. Then you could consider those items you initially said that we won't have. They can only be considered if all must, should, and could haves been completed. Then we could consider some of the requirements out of the won't have, again, time permitting. Now, these methods are more appropriate to agile because in predictive environment, we don't have a choice not to fulfill our requirement. But in agile, we do have that kind of flexibility that we can prioritize the requirements and do those which are more important. A very similar kind of analysis is a Kano model, in which we don't have exactly the must have, should have, could have, or won't have, but a different mechanism of prioritizing. They say, okay, which are the requirements which will delight or excite the customer? They are considered at the top priority. First, delight and excite the customer, and then only those requirements which would be, kind of a means of delight or excitement to the customer, that will give joy to the customer, that will make the customer happy. Those items are to be done first. Once they are done, we can move on to the satisfiers, those things which could, soothe the customers in a way. They are not the delighters or exciters, but they will give comfort to the customer. So go for the satisfiers. Once they also have been done, then we can look into the third basket, which is the dissatisfiers, things which are bothering the customer, which are dissatisfying the customer. Try to address them, right? But you see, this is not as important as the satisfiers or the delighters or exciters. They are, once or those two baskets have been accomplished, then we can address the dissatisfactions, and naturally, customer would be more pleased, and then only can we go to the fourth basket, which is those things which customer has no opinion about. They are indifferent about. But if you have already delighted and excited them, already satisfied them, already removed some of the dissatisfier from their life, then you can move on to the indifferent items and do them as well. But kind of the won't have and indifferent items, probably if we don't even do them, that is even, considered all right. Okay, these two methods. Then we have the paired comparison. We do it a lot in Agile when we create a prioritization list. For example, I have got 2,000 different user stories lying in my product backlog, and I want to prioritize them. One of the methods is pair comparison. I pick the top two requirements, or for that matter, any two requirements, and compare them, which is more important. The important one comes on top, and then I compare that requirement with the third requirement, and whichever is more important, that comes on top, and that way I keep sorting my prioritization requirement. So rate and rank alternatives by comparing one against the other. That is called the paired comparison analysis. That is very simple, and that is used very commonly in Agile. There are many methods. These are just a couple of them which I am mentioning here. Then there is a 100-point method. 100-point method is like, it is also called monopoly money. For example, like in the game of Monopoly, every participant is given a specific amount of fake monopoly money to purchase things on the monopoly, right? So here also we have got various requirements written on the board, and we give them 100 points, and we ask them to vote out of these 100 points as many points to each one of the requirements written on the board. So if I were you, I would probably go for maybe on one requirement. I could say okay, I give it. It is from my point of view, it is very important. I give 50 points out of my 100 points to that. I am left with 50. So I say, okay, there is another requirement which I vote 20 points, and then I vote 10 points to another one, and 7 points to another one. So that way I have voted, and then it is your turn. You make your own votes, and you distribute your 100 points in amongst those requirements, and that way everybody in the room will be voting. At the end of the day, we will be adding the votes received for each requirement, and whichever is the highest number would go on the highest priority, then second, then third, and so on. I hope I was able to explain it.
Excellently, as usual. And let me just write something down.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I think I've done most of these. And it's interesting because I've done ones where you can combine them. You
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do. you could actually combine, in theory, all of them. That might be a bit crazy, but I think in one project I've done three Moscow paired comparison and 100 points at different times. So
Yeah.
okay, excellent. Thank you.
And these are not the only method. There are so many other methods. You maybe, you may encounter them in these slides. There are a lot many other methods. But anyways, mind mapping, you said you know already. There is no problem in describing that. We start on a large piece of paper with a central point at the heart of it, in the center of the paper, and then we start expanding it outwards. That point, the major point could be divided into 5 points. So we draw 5 boxes around it, and we link that with lines to the center, and then we further elaborate on each one of these points. That way, our mind map keeps growing outwards, and we get a large map. And that is indicative of all the brainstorming we have done, all the discussions we have done that could be translated into a visual map. That is a representation technique. And then we have the affinity diagram, which allows large number of ideas to be classified and reviewed and analyzed. So affinity diagram goes well with the other method we talked about. What was it? Let me look back. I am a little bad at remembering things. Yeah,
No.
nominal group technique. Nominal group technique and affinity diagrams go hand in hand. Like, I divide my team into small groups of, say, 10 people each, and those go and try to discuss out separate topics, and then they conclude their results with me. So this could be done in affinity diagram. This is this example of a context diagram in which what we are doing is that whatever we say you are trying to run a university, when you are trying to run a university, you may have to interact with certain entities, write down those entities around it, and then it is not like a road, not like a mind map, but it is like what is your linkage with them? What are you giving them, and what are you going to be getting from them? Each one of them. So, what are their interests and what are your interests? They are explicitly shown. So, this could be a good holistic map to show how well aligned you are with other entities or stakeholders. Right?
Yep.
Should I move ahead?
Please.
Prototyping, as we have already discussed, storyboarding and prototyping, I don't want to explain it any further. You understand what I mean by that. Then we develop the scope management plan using all these techniques in whatever order, whatever mechanism. But this scope management plan, actually, as I said, in scope management, we create two plans. One is the requirement management plan, which is created earlier, and then we create the scope management plan. And scope management plan actually helps us develop the scope statement and the work breakdown structure and things like that. So review the scope activities for the project and how that work will be done. So basically, we are more concerned in scope management plan in about how are we going to do it, not what we are going to do. Although it starts with a what, and then it enters into the domain of how. So the requirements tell us what to do, and scope management plan actually translates it into how to do, and then should include processes to prepare a scope statement, enable the creation of the WBS, establish the scope baseline ultimately, which includes the scope statement and WBS and the list of all the work packages we have come up with, get that approved, maintained, specifies how formal acceptance of the completed project deliverables will be obtained, and can be formal or informal. This scope management plan can be formal or informal, broadly framed or highly detailed, depending on the type of project you're doing, right? Maybe the project is very elaborate and it has to be a broad, it had to be a highly detailed formal document, or it could be a broadly framed one-pager for a very small or simple project. It could be even informal. That could suffice. But this could be any of these things. And this we are doing it from the predictive point of view. In predictive projects, only we can have the scope already defined in the beginning. Project scope
Sorry,
statement.
just,
Yes,
just go back there. Is that including how scope
how scope changes.
changes is changed?
That is part of the scope management plan. Yes, of course, that is definitely there. How the changes to scope can be
Okay.
brought, how they can be registered, recorded. But as I said, because if you have a separate change management plan, then probably that would record all the mechanisms of change there, right? So yes, I agree with you. Scope management plan should have that. How changes to the scope could be recorded and processed, right? But if you have unified all the management plans into the change related items into a separate plan, that would be called a change management plan. Scope statement, naturally, it tells you what is the product scope, what is the project scope, what is the acceptance criteria, what are the deliverables going to be coming out of where, and what is out of scope and what is in scope, and if there are any constraints or assumptions. Basically, this scope statement may not be a very lengthy document, but this leads to the work breakdown structure. Without having this scope statement, without having the product scope and project scope explicitly defined and acceptance criteria defined, we cannot do anything with the work breakdown structure. So basically, this is a precursor to a work breakdown structure. This is a very important document. This is a root document because WBS depends on it. And WBS is a very important document because everything else is dependent on the WBS. Our cost estimations, our activity duration estimations, our resource estimation, everything depends upon the work breakdown structure. So that's why these two documents are so important that they form part of the scope baseline. The scope statement, as well as the work breakdown structure, and then, as I said, a list of all the work packages, which is called the WBS dictionary. They all will be included in the baseline. So when you are planning the scope, all the tools we could use are listed here. We have the document analysis used to consider possible potential options and approaches. So how to execute this work? You will analyze the document, you will debate on it, and you can ultimately come up with a solution. You could have alternatives, various alternatives available. So you will analyze them and go for the best alternative. Naturally, if you could do something in three different ways, which is the manner in which you will do it. So you have to select one of the best, right? Which is the best. And that is where you do the alternative analysis. How to do it? There are three ways. Which way is the best way? This is the alternative analysis, and then you select it. Product analysis, derive new project requirements from existing documents. So you can analyze what we have done before, historical data, how the products similar to this had been produced earlier, what lessons we can learn from them, and how can we record them for our existing documentation. And naturally, the expert judgment I had already explained to you.
Yep.
Okay. So that the definitions are kindly garbled here. It says document analysis, the purple line takes us to the definition of document analysis, derive new project requirements from existing documents. Alternative analysis, actually, the top one is the definition of the alternative analysis, used to consider possible potential options or approaches to execute and perform project work. Product analysis is the blue line, taking us to ask questions about a product and from form answers to describe use, characteristics, and other relevant aspects. And expert judgment is this red one, analyze the information needed to develop a project scope statement or any technical details. So this is kind of a question in which you may have to relate the definitions with the description. Product analysis method, which is shown here, is kind of broken down here. And here is the concept of the product breakdown, which I already discussed with you. In some of the projects which are more, product oriented, we don't, some of the organizations, they say that we will break down the product down to the smallest level, but naturally that smallest level is not doable. If you are breaking down a car, it may be broken down to the nuts and bolts. And nuts and bolts doesn't tell me what to do with them. So the lowest level should be the work and not the nuts and bolt. That's why I said, even if you resort to a product breakdown structure, the lowest level should be the work packages. So this is one of the recognized mechanisms of work breakdown structure. PMI in their work breakdown structure does accommodate for the product breakdown. But the only condition is the lowest level should be a work breakdown structure. Even the UK method, which is the Prince 2 method, which initially had only the work product breakdown structure in their mechanism, now accommodates the terminology of work breakdown structure, and they coincide with the definition of PMI now. Then we have got systems engineering and system analysis happening. And naturally, you must be aware about that system engineering and system analysis are two very widely used topics and disciplines in which many books could be found. System engineering talks about the approaches, it approaches the design, integration, and management and the life cycle of the complex systems in the multidisciplinary way. So that whole science is called system engineering, and you may have to use that in your project depending upon the complexity. System analysis studies a product or service to identify goals and purposes and create systems, procedures to achieve them efficiently. So this is more practical approach. System analysts are basically hired for solving problems in the organization. Then we have got the requirement analysis that is more specific to the projects. But because naturally a requirement analysis may proceed, maybe, there must be maybe a system analysis behind it. There may be system engineering behind that, but requirement analysis is more specific to the requirements. It identifies, validates, and documents specifications for the project. Then there are two more disciplines which are very pertinent. And again, I would say there are many books written on the topics of value engineering and value analysis. Value engineering is kind of optimizing the value in a structured way. So this is a complete knowledge in itself, but you could apply that in your product analysis. Value analysis is examining the factors affecting the product or service cost in a systematic, interdisciplinary way towards the success with the lowest cost and required quality and reliability standards. Well, it is not really saying it, but it is trying to kind of touch upon the efficiency beside effectiveness. So we did talk about effectiveness and efficiency. So it is trying to say that we are trying to, toward the success with the lowest cost. So it's mentioning the efficiency in a way. But anyways, These are all to be considered, but requirement analysis is naturally my top priority here because that directly relates product breakdown and requirement analysis. They are directly related with what I'm doing. But naturally, if you have to resort to other disciplines like system engineering, system analysis, value engineering, and value analysis, this could also be done. So that is as far as the product analysis is concerned. We have already overshot the time. Tell me when can we stop? Let me show you how many slides I have on the topic of scope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Jesus Christ.
It's too much. It's too much.
Uh,
Yeah, about 15, 14 or 15 slides more. So should we take it to the next class?
where are we now? We're on slide.
We are, just a moment, we are here on creating the WBS. I can stop here and we can start in the next class from here onwards.
Are we on schedule
This
so
is
far?
slide
How many slides do we have in the overall lesson 3?
lesson 3. Let me see. We have got total of 152 slides and we have done only 31 so far. And I told you it is a very long lesson because it talks about the planning of everything. We are planning, everything. We still are on the scope and 15 more slides and probably that is 40, 47, 48. Until 48, we will be completing it. And then we will move on to the schedule and cost and all that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you know best, but sounds like it'll take more than 2 more classes. Probably take 3 more classes to finish this
Yeah,
lesson.
maybe. Yeah, maybe, yes.
And then we've got a further 5 lessons after that to complete.
Actually,
Um,
after the fourth lesson, uh, this is the third one. After the third lesson, fourth lesson is kind of we could do it in 1 or 2 days, and sixth lesson is almost just an hour job, right?
and the
Four and
fifth lesson.
five, 4 and 5 will take little time, maybe one to two lectures each. And sixth lesson is just a 1 hour job.
Okay, but basically you can do lesson 4, 5, and 6 in 3 lessons, is it? In three
Four,
classes.
5, and 6 in 3 days, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm, no, 4 I can do in 1 to 2 days. No, yeah, 4 and 5 and 6 I can do in 2 days, 2 to 3 days.
Yeah. So let's call it 3 days.
Yeah.
And then do we need a little time at the end for anything after that, or is it we're done then?
3 days and 3 days, 6 days, and we will be left with 2 days. Yeah, we have 2 days margin at the end. We
For
can
revision or something or what?
no. First of all, if we delay on anything, we can catch up in those 2 days. Or if you have any other questions, we can also do that. But
Okay.
there
All
is
right.
no
Well, I think
question.
I think broadly speaking, we're on plan as it
Yeah.
stands.
We are
It'll
trying
be
to
intense.
catch. Yeah,
It'll be intense. But this is the most difficult or longest lesson, at least anyway, of all of them,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. I suppose the only thing to keep in mind or question I have is there's lots of lists of things here, and we're only a quarter of the way through this one. Um, there's lots of lists. Am I supposed to be able to remember all these lists? So
No,
when it
not at all.
says
Not at all. You don't need to remember. I would say always try to understand the things. Never try to remember them.
Okay.
understanding means if you really understand the logic behind it, you don't
Yeah.
need to remember or mug it up, right?
Yeah.
So I am very much against mugging things up, but there are certain things which may be remembered in a certain order, but that is not like, 33 items of the project documents. You don't need to mug that up. That is not required at all, right? But,
All right.
something which could be, like, I would say initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closing. This is something you have to mug up, but this is very logical. It comes automatically. So, practically speaking, you don't need to mug up anything.
Okay. Very good. Um, that's cool. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Suhail. Have a great weekend. When will we start? What time do you want to start on Monday? Let me just check my calendar. It's up
Will
to
it be
you.
possible to start as we did today? Or, I am fine. It is 1:15 or 12:15 or 12:30. I'm fine with it.
Um, okay, so let's go with 12 30 on
Okay.
Monday, half an hour early, yeah?
Okay. Good. Good.
Yeah?
We can do
Okay.
that. We can do that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna update my calendar. So half an hour earlier than officially. Yeah. So 12:30 Central
Mhm.
European time Monday. Okay. Good
Just keep
stuff. Oh,
reminding me every time, every day that what is the suitable time, and we can always do that.
yeah. Okay. 12:30. I'll see you then on Monday.
Sure, sure. Take care and bye bye.
Thank you very much. Take care, Suhail. Have a great weekend. Thanks.